What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Binge Empire podcast. This is Brian here with my co-hosts, producer Dave and Kyle. And today we're talking season 2, episode 7, the finale of the hit video game turned Max TV series, The Last of Us. As the video game guy, I had a lot to love, a lot not to like. I think my biggest gripe was about 20 minutes into a light 50-minute episode. I felt like we really hadn't been progressing things. So I think maybe it fell victim to a little bit of a pacing problem where there were a lot of like emotional conversations, which were good. But I'm looking at my watch. I see it's only going to be a 50-minute episode. So they spent a lot of screen time on these emotional, heartfelt conversations between Ellie, Dina, Jesse. And then we're moving at a breakneck pace for maybe the last 30 minutes of the episode. And I think they definitely managed to fit it all in, but maybe they emphasize more things more than some other things that I would have liked fleshed out more. And it's tough to fit a finale into 50 minutes. So maybe I just wanted a little bit more of this show that I've really come to enjoy. But overall, I think it was, like I alluded to last episode, a hell of a cliffhanger that they left us on. And I think that is going to bring us to our two newbies to the source material or just the Last of Us universe, and Kyle and Dave. And I'm dying to hear what you guys thought about this finale.
Yeah, I'll start here and I'll agree with you in that the first half of it definitely felt like, okay, we're in the finale. I did also know that it was a 50-minute episode and we are at that midway point. I'm sitting there thinking, I feel like we're going to have to get a lot of action in this last half here. And we absolutely do. I mean, calling our shots, Kyle and I, the past couple of episodes have been a little worried, and all for the right reasons. I was jaw dropped on the floor, especially with how they executed said person's inevitability. We won't get into it quite yet. But wow, man, I thought this was an incredible finale. I knew it was going to be a cliffhanger, but I guess the severity of the cliffhanger I wasn't ready for, I guess. And this definitely was that. And I don't know how I feel about them keep doing this. The show keep doing this thing of, they feel like they get to a point of the episode ending and then they kind of throw these like minute or two scenes at us. And it kind of took me out of it a little bit, if I'm not going to lie. Like, just knowing that we're heading into Abby's backstory at the very end, it was not, I guess once it faded to black, I was expecting that to be the credit roller. And then we get the little tease of what's to come, which I guess is interesting, but overall still like, wow, just another episode 2 kind of moment for me where I'm just sitting there in my thoughts, just like, whew, can't believe that just happens. So kudos to the actors, everybody. I think it was an excellent episode.
I agree with the structure comment with kind of adding in the Seattle day one thing at the end of this episode. That was also something we talked about in the Discord a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe the episode itself was potentially the same way you could describe maybe the season, of just like a little uneven. Of there's some highs, there's some lows, there's some moments that make me kind of scratch my head of like what was really the thought process of going on here. I think overall I enjoyed it. It also seems like, Dave, we probably will end up enjoying it more than the general public, just of like the content that I've seen on the internet in the aftermath of it. I thought it was perfectly okay. I think from like a large scale view, I'm really upset that Jesse is gone, that being like this big moment. I just think the biggest issue for me, and it's probably bad that it's the biggest issue, and it's probably looking back on the season to the biggest issue, is just Ellie as a character just feels a little, again, uneven, just like up and down and not entirely sure like what's happening with her from scene to scene a little bit. And we'll talk about all that as we move forward. But this will be fun to get into all these scenes and kind of maybe talk in a little more detail.
Yeah, and I think the last couple episodes we've been great at dissecting these scene by scene, so I don't want to belabor the point up front here, but I do just want to bring up a little a couple talking points about this episode and maybe the season as a whole. So right now this is sitting at a 6.6 on IMDb. Take that with an absolute grain of salt. These things fluctuate, but that is definitely below the bar that this show has set for itself. And I can't say that I argue with that. I would probably, if I had to give it an out of 10, a 7 out of 10 is where I'm sitting at, but probably no higher than a 7 out of 10. Kyle, I can't really articulate it, but mirroring what you were saying, it just felt uneven to me, and I can't really fully say why to myself. Also, the finale had a 3.7. Excuse me. The finale had
You cut out a little bit
3.7.
after you said, I can't quite like say why.
Hello? Am I here? Am I good
You're
now?
good now. Yeah. It was just, it got a
Okay,
little
cool.
robotic on us. Dave, you're muted, by the way.
You're good.
Also, cool.
Sorry.
Also, this finale had 3.7 million viewers, which was down from 5.3 million viewers of the premiere of season 2 and significantly down from 8.2 million viewers of the finale of season 1, which HBO will swear to you it's because it was Memorial Day weekend and they insist that these numbers are going to rise, but you don't want to see it that. And all of this might be washed away by the fact that on a per episode basis, season 2 is tracking much better than season 1. It's at about 37 million viewers per episode, whereas season 1 was at about 32 million viewers per episode. And I guess all of that is to say this show is a juggernaut. It's undeniable, but that's not necessarily the in-season trend that you want to look for. And that's definitely been a talking point. Just taking the pulse of Twitter, I don't think video game players like myself are very high on it, but I also think people are so rigidly attached to like every minute detail in the video games that any changes they're going to freak out about. And I'm not necessarily that low on this finale. I think one or two things I really was just like, that just doesn't make sense. I don't really understand why they would make that change, but we'll get into it. Those are just some little nuggets that I want in everybody's head before we get into it. Dave, what's up?
I'm honestly kind of shocked at all those statistics that you presented at me because, I mean, you guys have definitely, it felt like over the course of our discussions on these podcasts, have felt per episode by episode a little bit down on each one versus where I feel like I've been a little bit higher on each episode. And for it to be at a whatever 6.7 you said it was on is mind-blowing to me because I personally honestly thought this was better than season 1. And maybe that ignorance is bliss in this situation, but I'm genuinely just surprised that all the numbers were down. I mean, I will say the marketing for it didn't feel like it was quite as there for season 1. Like season 1, it was everywhere and it caused such a hype around it. And when season 2 came strolling around, there wasn't as much marketing for it. Like you'd see posters here and there, I feel like, but it didn't feel like it was reaching as much as it did in season 1. I don't know if that had to play into it, but I'm shocked at all that, to be honest.
Kyle, can I ask how you think about that marketing point? Because I was looking for information about this because I love the source material. Did you feel so they did a good job marketing season 2?
Truth be told, I have no idea how I was feeling
Okay.
heading into this season. I don't really have a memory of any of it. I think for me personally, it was like we had scheduled, we were going to do the podcast. So like that was enough for me. So I wasn't really going out of my way to maybe see or get a gauge on what was happening. You know, I don't think that's crazy to say though, Dave. I just feel like I have a memory of the maybe general reaction after the pilot being like, oh, I didn't even realize that season 2 of The Last of Us was back. You know, even like talking with like people that we hang out with and what maybe don't like, obviously, I mean, they don't have a podcast, so they're not, engaging in TV all of the time and things like that. So that's not totally crazy. The thing that I'm taking the most away from that is going to be almost looking forward of like how many people are going to stick around for a season 3 now that like what happened at the end of this episode and like the way that it seems they're hinting at what the structure of season 3 will be, of like how many people out there are actually going to be interested in that. And I don't know, we'll talk about all of that, I assume, as we get towards the end, but that's really all I was thinking when you were giving those comparison numbers. It could get maybe a little worse in a season 2 to season 3 comparison.
Personally, I think season 3 is going to make for more compelling content. So I'm pretty excited for it. This finale too, Isaac was pretty prevalent. Owen and Mel, at least the one scene that they were in, was meant to be a very, very impactful scene. Those are 3 characters that we don't really know a lot about. And it seems like you guys know where the structure of season 3 is heading. We may or may not find out more about them. The whole thing about season 2, now that I have a change of scenery, the whole thing about season 2 is that it can't really be judged until season 3 comes out, because there is another side to this coin that we kind of set up, obviously, in the last 30 seconds of this episode. And to compound that point, Craig Mazin, the showrunner, whatever you want to call him, already said that it's going to be hard to fit this thing into 3 seasons. So he's already alluding to they're probably going to want a 4th season, which the way season 2 went, I can see how that is probably his intention. So all of that is to say, season 2 was a roller coaster that ended on a hell of a cliffhanger. I guess we all got our preambles out of the way. Are we ready to kind of dive into this thing?
Let's do it.
We start off at the theater, and Jesse is tending to Dina's leg, which has a crossbow bolt through it, and he offers her some whiskey, which she stoutly declines, obviously alluding to the pregnancy, which, you know, we find out later Jesse is going to put 2 and 2 together. Where this scene takes us is to this heartfelt, kind of emotional scene between Ellie and Dina, where, you know, Ellie takes the shirt off, and now it's Dina's turn to kind of tend to her wounds, whereas Ellie has been the protector of a pregnant Dina kind of through this whole Seattle trek. And I mean, it's nice. She confides in her about Nora and says, I thought it would be harder to, quote, you know, make her talk, but it really came easily to me. And this kind of spills over to Ellie sharing the truth about Joel and the Fireflies with Dina, to which Dina kind of turns her nose up at the idea. And I guess us as the audience are supposed to put together that Dina's like, are you kidding me? We're here on this revenge tour for this guy who kind of had it coming. We got to get back to Jackson. So for my money, I hated that Ellie burst through the doors and pushed right past Jesse and was just like, where's Dina? All I care about is Dina. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Jesse deserves the time of day from you. But how did this whole scene with Ellie and Dina land for you guys?
It was interesting because, I mean, unless my memory is doing me a disservice, I don't think we ever really talked about what it would be like when Dina learns the truth. You know, everything was always centered around what it'll be like when Ellie learns the truth. And this was interesting in that, yeah, like I said, we never considered it. I think logically it makes sense, and that she's like, okay, like we should go home. I think it's easier for her to come to that conclusion as well because she had a crossbow through the leg and she's pregnant and those things. But again, at this point too, it felt like for me, and this is potentially going to, you know, swerve into a comment on the structure of things, in that it was like, okay, wow, like we're leaving. Like we're already getting out of here. Like that's the plan now, is to leave, which felt like, okay, this feels slightly sudden. But other than that, it feels like a logical reaction from Dina. Maybe not the thing I want to see, but I think it makes sense. So from that perspective, I don't think I had a huge gripe on it.
It kind of took me a second to understand how Dina was reacting to the news. I couldn't tell at first. Like there was obviously the look of shock, but there wasn't like outrage or anything. So I couldn't right off the bat honestly tell how she was feeling about if she wanted to continue with the mission, or if she actually, this was the nail in the coffin of we need to go home now. Like, what is this all for at this point with the news? So it didn't get until like brought up later a couple times where they all are in agreement that they should leave. But I had a hard time actually reading right off the bat what Dina's reaction was to it all. But yeah, you're right, Kyle. We never actually kind of talked about, we had talked about the relationship that Dina and Joel had, and how that was probably like a second daughter almost to Joel. Obviously, him and Ellie's relationship goes much deeper than Dina's and hers does, but that was still someone that Joel saw and was raising at the same time. And it was unfair for us to just not assume that Dina would also have a gripe with doing this mission when learning about this information.
Yeah, it was interesting too in that Ellie apologizes, but from my perspective, it's not like Ellie really lied to Dina or anything like that. I feel like Ellie found out that what they did to Joel was because of Salt Lake City, because of Nora. You know, she had
And it
just
was
learned
also
it that night. It wasn't like Ellie was really hiding that for the most part from Dina. I think she was maybe vaguely aware, but it didn't seem like Ellie was confident that like that was actually the retribution for that, was how I took that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think she does say here she didn't know who the people were, but she follows that up by saying, I kind of had an idea that that's what was going on. So Ellie apologizes because I think she's admitting she knew enough to kind of put the whole picture together and was seeking revenge on these people who were themselves seeking revenge on Joel and probably justifiably seeking that revenge. And that was maybe not the explicit lie that she told to Dina, but maybe was not revealing the whole truth or was withholding part of the truth to Dina, which in this scene, at least to me, it played as Dina was a little upset about that fact. And it was certainly enough for her to turn heel and say, no, we're going back to Jackson. Like, this is not the revenge tour I want to pursue.
Yeah, it was
And
interesting too that a part of this scene, or maybe a big part of this scene really, is Ellie having that questioning moment of, you know, did Nora deserve this? And maybe it's because I was so gung ho about the fact that it was going to be a loss on our side was going to be what made Ellie realize that like the path of revenge maybe isn't what's best for her. But it seems like the first second that she got a taste of what it meant to walk the path, actually, she immediately started having second thoughts, which I think was surprising to me. I think, and we talked about it on the podcast too, of, and man, maybe this isn't the greatest look for me, but like I was looking forward to like a more aggressive, like bloodthirsty kind of Ellie. And we literally get the exact opposite of that in this episode. And that's where I kind of was talking about earlier in this podcast episode of where it feels Ellie's character kind of was swinging from emotions a lot, which again, 35,000 foot view, not a crazy thing for this 19, 20-year-old woman to, you know, be dealing with all these ranges of emotion because of what's happening. You know, a lot's going on. I understand that stuff. It just felt like I wanted a more clear direction out of her. And it felt like each scene, it was like each scene she was in a different headspace about what to do and how she felt about it and that stuff.
no, yeah, that was well put, Kyle. And I guess I'll just kind of progress us through. I was a little upset. Again, I'm like clocking the time here. We're at about 12 minutes into this finale episode that I know is going to be like 45, 50 minutes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're like, come on, let's get to some action here. Like, this is not enough to quench my thirst for what I wanted to see. Anyway, though, I mean, this was a necessary conversation. The first part where she kind of confides with Dina about the morality of torturing Nora, essentially. And let's not skip over the fact Ellie reveals she left Nora there, presumably to turn infected and just have the worst life ever. Like, what's that guy's name? Leon, who just became one with the wall. So that is like a fate far worse than death that she didn't even bat an eye at leaving Nora there. And I also think it's here that Nora's clue to Abby's whereabouts were the words whale and wheel. So stick a pin in that. Obviously, it becomes important. But progressing through, it becomes Seattle day 3. We get kind of the white font, and Jesse and Ellie are packing up to, we find out, rendezvous with Tommy, because we're now kind of all on team. Let's rendezvous and get the hell out of Seattle. Nothing good can come from staying here. Dina gives Ellie a bracelet for good luck, whatever. And then we get this little aside with Jesse and Ellie trying to get to the bookstore. And Jesse is clearly tense. And I mean, come on, Jesse's been our moral compass this whole time. And I think he has been able to provide a dose of maturity to Ellie. And at this point, Ellie is a little bit apologetic even to Jesse because she knows she's in the wrong and that Jesse had to come from Jackson to Seattle to bail her out. And this is where Jesse's like, okay, so Dina's pregnant, right? And puts 2 and 2 together there. For me, I didn't appreciate how unconvincingly Ellie tried to withhold the truth from Jesse. And then when she does get found out, all Ellie can muster is, fuck. It was like, come on. But like, that just struck me as bad writing, and it sucked the air right out of the scene. In this scene, young Mazzino was acting circles around Bella. I cannot avoid that fact. He just was. He has been a shining light in this, and Bella has been great in moments, several of which were in this episode. But this scene specifically, it took me right out of the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, it's this like somewhat, I mean, to use the word of the podcast, maybe uneven, where it's like if you're going to try to hit this like maybe slightly lighthearted tone, it's really got to hit. And that's what it seemed like almost they were trying, where it was like, oh, shucks, like you didn't actually know. But also maybe it wasn't actually written like that. I'm not entirely sure. And it was just odd. But I think for me too, maybe a benefit of how the scene was, and that this was where we really started getting like the Jesse, I can't die, stuff.
Yeah.
And they got really heavy handed with it, which was unfortunate, I think, personally. But this is where it was like, I think I wrote in the Discord as I was watching live of like, I'm however many minutes in, and it's just, he's got to he's going to die. Like, there's no way now that he knows this. And he's like, I got to get out of here. I was just like, damn, he's totally gone.
It was also funny too. Is this also the moment where Jesse kind of goes in deeper about how he actually found the theater? Because that was something that was like eating away at us for a few episodes. And it's like, how did he exactly find the theater? And kudos to them, because we didn't think we were going to get that answer. It was we thought it was going to be open-ended. So I'll shout that out. But yeah, I agree here. This was kind of a one moment for me for where Bella's acting kind of did take me out of it as well, with the situation. Just, it felt just too corny. I don't know if they were trying to go for it, but it didn't really hit that hard. But I will say, yeah, with Jesse, just, I'm going to be a father. I have these responsibilities now. I have to make it home no matter what. It was just anime death sentence calling, just
for sure,
written all over the walls.
Shimmer's fine. Not that you asked, says Jesse.
Yeah. I mean, he, at this point, this is the start of him for, let's say it's 3 straight scenes, however many minutes it was in the episode, of just like putting her in a body bag of like moral. It was just like, you don't really have a leg to stand on in a lot of these conversations, Ellie. And I guess for me, is it Young as an actor? Is it my love for Jesse as a character? Is he like 100% correct? All of it. I just felt like I was on his side the whole time, of like, this guy's making a lot of sense and I'm really agreeing with him.
Definitely.
Yes, I think that shifts for me a little bit on the rooftop scene. I think Jesse is still coming to the right decision, but Ellie correctly points out his hypocrisy in coming to that decision. But we'll get there. A little bit more of just Jesse laying down the correct answer is this scene with the Seraphite being attacked by the squad of wolves. And look, I get where Ellie's coming from. I saw a review that said it's hard for her to watch a scene like that and just let it happen, because back in the day, she was that young child that needed rescuing and Joel rescued her, hence setting our series into motion. But at this point, I'm so on team Jesse. I mean, he calls her out for being the reason they're all in Seattle. This isn't our war. There's 6 of them, 2 of us. What do you want us to do? It's a losing battle, and the stakes are too high right now. I was so team Jesse.
This scene was really pissing me off, especially from Ellie's side of things, with how much she wanted to save him. And Jesse was just spitting nothing but facts here of just making the right move. Like, this is not our war. There is no reason for us to get involved. And in the moment, for me, when I was watching this scene, it was pissing me off that Ellie was acting this way. It wasn't until later that we get reminded that Ellie was in a situation like that. And it's like, oh yeah, like that's not something that had been addressed, in so long. And they never built Ellie's character up since then of being, heroic. She's, to me, it's not like she's going. I didn't feel, it felt out of place for me at this moment in time of the show for her to want to save someone random, because it felt like she had been so selfish for so long. And then she wants to save this random Seraphite again, who she has no idea whose side is quote unquote in the right, if either of them are in the right. I'm sure neither of them are, but it was confusing for me. And it wasn't, again, until later when they said, oh yeah, like when she's making the plea to Jesse at right before the aquarium, she's saying, this is what happened to me. Watching what happened to the Seraphite was me. And I was like, oh yeah, that's fair enough. But in the moment, I was definitely furious with how Ellie was reacting. I think they could just do a better job of developing Ellie's characters to make these points of like, she wanted to save that guy. That felt like it was so out of left field for me when she wanted to do that from what we had seen these past couple episodes of her.
Yeah, I think you just walk away frustrated with her. And not that that's necessarily a bad place to be for her character, but like Dave said, it becomes maybe this thing of like the whole season of it's kind of like all over the place a little bit. So you don't feel like maybe there's this ability to give like a level of grace or like extend some type of understanding. I don't even know really the right way to say it, but it's just that her character specifically feels like it should be this main artery of the show, and we should have kind of this maybe understanding of her. And again, maybe it's part of our fault that we're not really picking up on the things we should be, but also for the show, it feels like Ellie, sometimes they want us not to like her in scenes and for her to act like a brat, and then other times it's like things that she could do are kind of softer, and where it's like, okay, it's like not bratty, and I don't really understand. And again, maybe that's a 19-year-old person in this situation, but I think sometimes as a viewer it comes off as frustrating.
To go into the inconsistencies, she is legitimately put into this same situation later on, but it's Tommy's life that's on the line, and she opts not to save him, and then just proceeds to dig into Jesse about how he's not, oh, you're so morally straight, but here you are, you want to save some like Tommy here. But it was just annoying because, again, she's presented a situation later on where she has the option to save someone who she even has a deep connection with in Tommy, and then she still opts to go for Abby, where here she's thinking about, oh, I want to save the Seraphite, this random Seraphite, rather than, oh, I need to kill Abby. That is one example of how polarizing she was this episode in terms of getting her mission done.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a character be a hypocrite. That's an interesting place to explore a character for sure. It's just that maybe this is going to be the only way I feel like I can say in this moment. It's probably not the most thought out way of, you kind of have to earn a level of maybe goodwill or like development up into that point to where like it's easier for us to swallow the hypocriticalness and it shifting so much. Because then you could just run the risk of someone just being a straight hypocrite, and then we're kind of like annoyed with it versus like we're coming at it more of a level of like an understanding of like the difficulty maybe of the situations almost. But for me, like Dave's saying too, I just left this scene frustrated with her, which could be the point, but I'm not really enjoying sitting in that space.
Yes. And obviously, one of the major themes of this show, this story, is revenge. And I think for Ellie specifically, it shows how you can be so blinded by that pursuit of revenge that you abandon all reason. Like Dave, you were saying, hey, let's save Tommy, who is still alive. No, I want to kill someone to get revenge for someone who is already dead. Ellie is not always a likable character because of this pursuit of revenge, where she doesn't follow reason and make the right choices. And I mean, you contrast this finally in the last scene, as you guys have been speculating all season, she realizes her selfish ways too late when Jesse is lying on the ground in front of her with a bullet in his head, and she finally breaks down. No, just let Tommy go. I'm the one you want. And finally it all hits her at once, what she should have been doing all along. So it's undeniable. Ellie is not always going to be a likable character. Kyle, that was a good point maybe it makes it less palatable because she hasn't really curried that much favor with us as the audience, because kind of since day one, she's been a little bit brash and a little bit rough around the edges and always making bad decisions like a teenager or a kid would. Though I digress. So they only are presented with that Seraphite situation because they had to take shelter from the rain, which is going to be a rising storm through this Seattle day 3, crescendoing into the night scenes where it's a full-on just monsoon over Seattle. But we kind of take a break from the Jesse and Ellie of it to visit in with Isaac and Lieutenant Park, who have this scene that struck me as a little bit on the nose. They're going over, hey, any word from Abby? No, we haven't heard from her. Also, Owen and Mel are still gone. And again, we don't know too much about these characters. But then Park is like, why do you care so much about Abby? And Isaac says, there's a good chance you and I are going to die tonight. She's supposed to be the one that leads us. She is like the best. She's so great. And it struck me as on the nose because I feel like at this point, like if they wanted that to be something that the audience knows how capable Abby is and how good of a leader she is, we should have already picked that up. She's had enough screen time to have shown us that. And yet all we've seen her do is fall down a mountainside, almost get killed by did, and kind of be, I don't know, obviously the leader of the group that came to Jackson, but kind of like, well, Owen seems like he's the one that really knows what's up and stuff like that. So I feel like this was the show being like, hey, guys, Abby is a real leader. She's a go-getter. Like, people respect her. Don't forget that. And I just don't like that we're being spoon-fed that information, whereas Abby should have just shown us that for herself at this point.
Yeah, I was also a bit shocked at the matter-of-factness that he was like, we'll probably not make it tonight. I guess it's never felt like the conflict going on in the background was at that level for them. It always felt more like skirmishy, like we do this thing and then they do that thing. And I guess maybe the backdrop of this episode is it's kind of boiling into this full-blown conflict. But yeah, I kind of walked away from the scene slightly confused about like how we had really actually gotten to this point. I wish maybe we had spent maybe some more time with the WLF and dealing with that type of stuff. I think could have been a benefit. I mean, I would not have complained at all with more scenes of Isaac in this season. And we got 2 less episodes than we got last season too. So I think it's just when we start to talk like this, and then we start to realize that we got 2 less episodes. And then sometimes it's kind of like, damn, like it could have been like the parts were kind of there. And sometimes they don't always fit in the right way.
Yeah, I'm with you. Looking back, the scene felt like to me it was setting up for something big, and it obviously we get the backdrop of it, like with the explosions as Ellie's getting to the aquarium, but we never really see what's going on, like Kyle says, and it is definitely taking away a little bit from the intensity of what is actually happening in the WLF versus Seraphite situation. Because yeah, like Kyle said, I mean, it felt like just a bunch of back and forth battles where they attack us, we retaliate, then they retaliate. And we knew that Isaac was interrogating the Seraphite earlier and found that, oh, when's the next attack happening? It wasn't like emphasized ever that, oh, when's their last attack coming or when's their big, finale attack coming. And it was just always kind of played under the rug as just the next attack that was just felt like a back and forth. So I was kind of looking at the scene at first, getting excited for the whole situation because, as I've been saying all season, the Seraphite and WLF situation has been very interesting to me, and I've always wanted to get more into the background of it, and it's unfortunate that we don't really get that. And there was an opportunity later on for them to kind of give us that information, and they opted not to give us that in the scene that Ellie ends up on the island really quickly and runs into the Seraphites. I felt like that is another moment that could have been given almost a whole episode of, with Ellie being with the Seraphites and maybe figuring out the situation. Maybe I'm just over dissecting it at this point, but it built up a tension for me that did not hit by the end of the episode. And maybe we'll get it in the next season, hopefully, but it left me wanting more for sure.
Yeah, I just walked away like thinking, are they on the defense? Like, are they defending against an attack and that they're worried about? Or it also kind of seemed like it was maybe an offensive thing because, like they mentioned, when we get to the island, like they're attacking the island too. So I just was kind of confused about where this immediate life and death tonight stakes were coming from for Isaac. And maybe it seems like season 3 will set us up with that stuff, but that's kind of a hard sell sometimes to people where it's like, all right, 2 years and however many episodes, and then we'll kind of get the background on why we're at this point.
Look, that's the thing that concerns me is, like I said earlier, I think season 3 could arguably be way more compelling than season 2 wound up being because the other shoe drops, but that's asking a lot of your audience to kind of present breadcrumbs in season 2, a crazy cliffhanger, and then be like, okay, wait 2 more years, then we'll get back. Whereas in the games, it played out very similarly, but then you immediately get to play through 25 hours of gameplay and you're like, wow, this is awesome. So I guess my takeaway for anybody listening is hang in there for season 3 if you're a little bit iffy on how season 2 landed, because I think it's going to be really, really good. And they set up the breadcrumbs pretty well. And you guys are actually talking about points that may be frustrating and ambiguous now, but I think could potentially have a great payoff later.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
just
All the complaints that I have could definitely easily be squashed with
Yeah.
a third season. And if they come, when we come back to all of this information and then everything becomes more clear to us, it's just, yes, frustrating right now to have that not all presented to us and leaving us like a lot of cliffhangers to end on, not just like the big one.
I'll just say again, Jeffrey Wright is an absolute beast. So more screen time for him and Isaac, please and thank you. But let's move on to the bookstore scene between Jesse and Ellie. And this is where they air their dirty laundry about the love triangle between Ellie, Jesse, and Dina, obviously. And Jesse says, let me just take the lead here. Yes, I love her, but not the way you do. And he shares his past about how he had a fling with a woman who passed through Jackson, who had to leave and invited him to go with. And he essentially goes up on his pedestal and says, but I declined because I was taught to put the people in my community first, or something to that effect. And Ellie calls him out by saying, what? So you're Saint Jesse of Wyoming and all of us just are jerks who can't do anything right? And he's like, laugh if you will, but who would have saved your butt in Seattle had I went to Mexico with this woman? Essentially saying, I kind of am better than you, Ellie. There's not really a way around that, and I did bail you out. It was a good moment between them because I think there was, even though Jesse is such a great guy, there was a little bit of tension between them. So this conversation had to happen.
Yeah, and I think it almost kind of, again, displays this just like large gap, maybe in emotional maturity between the two of them, in that Jesse really isn't saying I'm better than everyone in Jackson Hole, but that's like the way that Ellie takes it. It's like she can't sit with the kind of the layer of truth that's actually there in what he's saying, and that he has had moments in his life where he could have just pursued like what was actually important to just him as a person, and which is what she has done, but he's kind of able to think at a larger picture and put the needs of others ahead of himself, which I would say in the situation where there is an apocalyptic fungal infection that is rapidly murdering people, not even murdering them, turning them into zombies and enemies of any community that's out there, probably a very beneficial way to think, and I can see totally a way too that it comes off at a level of arrogance for him. I think he enjoys a little bit too of like this feeling of that he can kind of sit in this level of smugness a little bit, and that he was totally been proven right up until this point. Like she totally put her neck out there and then almost force Jesse and Tommy to put their lives on the line to come and save them. And then now Dina's pregnant. So now she's at some level, even though we've seen behind the scenes that Ellie is concerned about that, like she's putting Dina and then Jesse's child in danger by doing all this stuff too. So I liked this conversation and the rooftop one we'll get to too. It felt like very good set pieces for them to have these conversations, even if they're really not. There's no false pretenses that are happening. Jesse's telling it how it is. Ellie is telling it how it is from her perspective too.
Yeah, I think this was my favorite conversation of the episode between these two, and I think both actors did an excellent job in this particular scene. And yeah, I mean, I think Jesse's definitely the man. Jesse's definitely better than all of us. I mean, he is just
that's my boy.
He's what we all strive to be. So I can see it. And look, he's just trying to be a mentor. I mean, he's trying to explain his experiences to Ellie to show her kind of how like he has navigated. And I guess, yes, that comes off as arrogant because it's always like what he's experienced. And Ellie can only hear that it's him bragging about things when in reality it's him trying to teach her how to navigate life. And she just refuses to hear it that way. And it's more of just like, oh, you're so accomplished. You're so much better than us. And I really love this conversation. And there is like always that little bit of comedic. I love when she does say St. Jesse. I thought that was funny. And it was a good depiction of their relationship. I mean, it's always been a little bit of tension, especially I think because of how, Ellie definitely, we obviously know Ellie's had a crush on Dina for a while and she's had to watch Dina be with Jesse on and off for a long time. And I'm sure there was a little bit of a jealousy aspect to it all too. But this was a great conversation. And it shows both of their characters and how stubborn Ellie is, how yes, smug Jesse can be, but he is at the end of the day looking for the better of others as well, even if he's talking about himself as much as he does to Ellie. But he's the man. I'm definitely ride or die Jesse, and I guess I'm died now. Yeah, now I'm die Jesse.
The one thing I'm thinking in this moment too, that this is a take that's being shot out on the fly right now, of I wonder what type of like connection there is in that, like when Ellie says last episode of Joel kind of took that purpose away from her of being the immune person that helps get the cure, and like what is my purpose now? And that I think speaks to this desire to be, someone that is like helpful to the community, and maybe the community gets as large as, the world. And I think that it feels like it's a very generous mindset that she's in that point where like, I wanted to give up my life to save all of these other people. And then it's almost, she's acting somewhat opposite of that in a lot of these situations, and where it's a lot of selfishness, what she wants, what she thinks is right, not really being able to see that perspective of like, this is what's best for the community versus maybe what's best for you as an individual. And I don't know if I have anything deeper than that, than just pointing out those two things that seem somewhat opposite. But I wonder if I don't know. I don't know if we'll get any deeper into that type of stuff, but it just feels like there's a take there that I'm just not smart enough to maybe flesh out.
Well, I guess I'll just leave it unfleshed, but we do get the walkie-talkie squawking saying there's a sniper, and they're both like, well, that's got to be Tommy because Tommy's a beast and he knows how to snipe people. And that leads us to this rooftop where to the right, we hear gunshots. And to the left, Ellie on her binoculars sees the whale on the side of the aquarium. And it's like, that's it. That's what Nora was trying to tell me. Abby is in this aquarium. And she looks over at Jesse, assuming he's going to have her back and be like, we got to go left. And Jesse is trying to give her a dose of reality and say, Tommy is here. And it's like cognitive dissonance for Ellie because she's like, we don't even know that's Tommy. And Jesse's like, yes, we do. That's him. He's here alive and we could help him. And yet you are seeking revenge. But this is where, number one, this was one of the two best acting scenes for Bella of the episode, in my opinion, this in the final. But she says, you're a hypocrite. You say that you want to help your community, but what does that mean to be part of the community? That if you're not from Jackson Hole, you're not worth saving? That Seraphite, you just watched him die because he wasn't a part of your community? That's ridiculous. That's kind of what, Kyle, you were saying. Ellie now sees her sense of purpose maybe as just trying to help anybody, no matter how reckless she needs to be to achieve that goal. But she also brings up, do you know who my community was? It was the guy who had his face beaten in by some chick that I didn't even know, as I was forced to watch. And you're lying to yourself if you say that you wouldn't do anything differently than what I'm doing now to seek revenge if someone did that to your quote community. So I think she kind of just said, listen, bud, I know you maybe do have the moral high ground against me, but you need to get off that pedestal because you are being hypocritical, because you are deciding which lives are and are not worth saving based on this definition of your community, which is a little bit hypocritical. And I think in the context of do we save Tommy or kill Abby, it's a little bit of a backwards reasoning, but I do think isolated, the point Ellie made to Jesse was a good one, or a fair one, maybe.
What's kind of tough in that she is skipping a level where, like, for her, it's we have to save this Seraphite because it's in general the right thing to do, let's say, even though I don't even know him. And then we're skipping the motivation of let's do what's best for Jackson Hole, let's say, as a community. And then we're skipping into this person is very personally my community and we need to do something about it, which is where it gets a little frustrating with her in a way of like, you're kind of skipping that second level of level 3 being anyone out there that's being hurt. Like we should try to save them. But I don't want to act in what's theoretically the best interests of, I would say her community is Jackson Hole. I mean, like she might not see it that way because she can be very narrow-minded and stubborn. And then skipping into what would be level 1 of like her immediate family of Joel as her motivation. And that's where it was kind of like, okay, I again, is the point that she is also a hypocrite and maybe is just finding excuses to justify behavior that she feels is best in the moment. For sure, that's totally reasonable. I can understand a character having all of those traits. It's just that like in these scenes I'm not walking away feeling any like thing good about Ellie. And again, maybe that is part of the story. It's just kind of it's a tough place to sit with the main character when you're not really jiving with them so hard, and then we're kind of killing off all these side characters that we do like to then try to teach this character that we're really not liking a lesson. And it kind of can get a little frustrating on this side.
Yes, Ellie's decisions here were obviously pissing me off, but I think I agree with you, B. Toms, where isolated in a vacuum, Ellie was making some great points. And I think it just all also just stems to just like, who is your community? Because if Ellie, her community was one singular person. I don't think she ever identified Jackson Hole as her community. And so her only community was Joel. Now, Jesse sees his community as Jackson Hole as a whole, but it's that there's so many people there and he can't possibly have that level of a deep connection with every person in Jackson Hole that Ellie did have with Joel. You know, like hypothetically, if they weren't on this revenge tour, Dina got pregnant from Jesse, Dina gets murdered by someone, absolutely Jesse's going down. I think even with how he's presented himself all season, I still would agree with Ellie that he would definitely go down the revenge tour of I need to hunt down the person that killed Dina, who, you know,
just don't agree.
You don't think so? I think so.
No.
I think he would. I think he would cave personally. But
well,
it's like it's the level of connection too. I'm just saying like his community is defined by like the people that are around him, where I think Ellie defines her community as like who you like really identify as like your family. Like sure, Jackson Hole is a family. It's people, but you're not like, again, you don't have these paternal father-daughter relationships. You're not like best friends with every single person in Jackson Hole. depends how close you are with them. And if I still think for Jesse, if someone closer to him than just like your average Joe Schmo in Jackson Hole were to like get murdered, I think Jesse would have more anger and understanding of where Ellie's coming from.
I mean, what do you think about the fact that he voted no?
I think we talked about that, right? I think we all said that there was no way he voted yes, and that wasn't surprising to me. But again, I don't think Jesse may say that Joel was in his community, but it wasn't. Again, this is whole like it's the levels that you're kind of saying. It's just he was in. Jesse may have identified Joel as in his community, but there's not that level of connection in that Ellie and Joel had in their quote unquote community. You know, it's so hard to just throw that term around without.
Yeah,
because like
I'm also too thinking like this is potentially showing us in a could be explicit way, but we're obviously having to have this conversation ourselves to get along with it, and that could just be a commentary on ourselves, but of the impact of Joel on her, and where we're kind of aware sometimes that Joel can be a bit of a hypocrite at times as well. Like, for example, the Eugene situation last episode, very easy for him to uphold the regulations in that moment, but if the shoe was on the other foot, Joel's probably shooting Eugene to get back to Jackson Hole to talk to Ellie, you know? So I could see, again, there of like some Joel's getting its way into Ellie in that sense of she's really acting brashly for the very specific individuals that she cares the most about, and everyone outside of that sphere kind of be damned. And that feels very Joel, to be honest.
At the end of the day, it was frustrating to watch Ellie just discard Tommy and she opt to go for Abby in the revenge tour. But the whole like philosophy of this conversation I thought was just like executed really well. And it definitely had me sitting there just like kind of questioning everything of just Ellie is, like B Tom said, Ellie was making some fair points to me. And while I knew her actions, the results of her actions were definitely not the way to go, but I thought this was definitely one of the deepest conversations of the series, probably.
And the conclusion is Jesse understanding that Ellie is digging her feet in, just as I really hope you make it. And they split up. Jesse off to help Tommy, and Ellie on her revenge tour. And this is where we get Ellie going to the docks, and she has her pick of the litter of these fully fueled up little motorboats that are conveniently just there for the taking. But we also get, you know, kind of this armada of wolves preparing for an offensive, a defensive, some sort of an operation, I guess, because they all got their lights on. There's maybe 24 of these fully manned boats. So the wolves are up to something big, seemingly, this episode and this night specifically, which is what Isaac was alluding to. And she takes a boat after the wolves kind of clear out, and she just beelines it to the aquarium. And, you know, it's a little bit of Battle of Winterfell. It's dark. There are tides. You can't really tell what's happening. I actually saw some online discourse saying, enough with the dark boat scenes. I'm tired of it. I thought it was kind of cool personally, but push comes to shove, capsizes and wakes up, washed ashore on not Seattle's coast. It is presumably this island that's seen in the distance. And right when she washes up on shore, she sees this Seraphite kid is promptly taken hostage by Seraphite adults, and she finds herself in the position, noose around her neck, and this Seraphite priest with the hook, the sickle, I guess you would call it, ready to gut her. This might have been the most frustrating scene, because the second alarms start ringing in the distance, they're like, we literally don't have a single second to just kill this girl with this sickle right here. We have to drop everything now and leave. You just leave her to her own devices with that pistol, and we're just never going to think of this again. Okay. And that's just how the Seraphites roll. And it it upset me because it was lazy writing and how just kind of rapidly the rest of this episode progresses. It seemed like this scene as a whole was shoehorned in, and I'll just bring up in the game, she does capsize, but then you just have to swim the rest of the way to the aquarium, which a little bit more just highlights her desire to seek that revenge, that she wouldn't just throw in the towel when she capsizes. So it, like, this doesn't happen at all in the game. And like, I think someone said earlier, if they were going to put this in, use it as an opportunity to flesh out the Seraphites maybe, but it just kind of happened. And then there was a lazy way to write her out of it. And then she's like, okay, back to the aquarium. And I was like, what just happened?
Yeah, was a big topic of convo in the Discord of pretty much unanimously agreeing, like, what in the world are we supposed to take away from this? And felt like a waste of time completely. I'm not entirely, I mean, the only thing I could think of off the top of my head of is like just giving us this reminder that the Seraphites aren't great either. That they'll just do that to someone without hearing them out. You know, no due process going on this island. You know, I just like don't really understand a ton of what we were supposed to take away. Like you mentioned, B Toms, of like showing her swimming the rest of the way to the aquarium could have been a way, to show that determination versus this stroke of luck almost.
Yeah, I was completely. We got to the island, we saw the Seraphites. I was like, okay, this will be interesting. Like maybe I'm again thinking of the Avatar: The Last Airbender with the Great Divide, and I'm thinking, okay, Ellie's going to spend some time with the Seraphites, and we're going to get some little details on what the hell is going on with why they're fighting the WLF in the first place. And then they just drop the news, leave her be. And I'm like, what the fuck was that? And even, I don't know if you guys stick around to watch like the how they built the episodes. They're pretty interesting sometimes.
Yeah.
And this one was good for at least showing the whole like swimming and the water scenes. Basically, I thought that was really impressive. And I think Bella Ramsey did a great job through all of that. But their explanation for why they included this scene, I was like watching, I'm like, this still to me makes absolutely no sense. They're like emphasizing like, oh, it's to really make you feel like she's doubling down on our mission. And it's just, we could have just had that if the capsizing alone and her swimming, to the aquarium alone would have been enough for me to know that she's just doubling down on the mission. But here you are capsizing her, putting in her this life and death situation. And then she gets out scot-free off like just pure plot armor. Just, we knew she wasn't going to die. And I don't know, it felt so unsatisfying. And this was definitely the one scene that was just so unneeded for the entire episode.
The doubling down is such an interesting thing in that we literally just saw her pick the mission over Tommy. That feels like the doubling down on the mission. Like that was enough to know like, oh, she's really fucking going for it despite what had happened to Dina and how she was kind of feeling in the aftermath of the Nora stuff. It was like, doesn't matter. I'm moving past that stuff. I'm doubling down on this mission.
Yeah.
Tough scene.
It was just so because it's 2 minutes, you blink and it's over, and then it's right back.
Gotta restart.
Yep. So it just struck me as very odd because it's 2 minutes of screen time. You blink and it's over. And then we're right back to some very, very, very important stuff, i.e. her arriving at the aquarium and the inevitable collision course with Owen and Mel. And props to the show. I distinctly remember climbing in through the broken window on top of the aquarium. The rain is falling into the room and you look around, you see signs of life like the sleeping bags. This aquarium feels a little bit lived in. So I thought this was good. How she kind of meanders through this dark, dimly lit aquarium, all very good and took me right back to the game. And then, we have this scene with Mel and Owen. And Owen and Mel are arguing about Abby, we gather. It seems like Owen is saying, I have to go. It's Abby. Like, we got to do this. Mel's like, no, I don't want to go, partially because it's Abby. That's really all we get. We don't exactly know what the context is, but that's when Ellie appears and put him up. And the scene progresses as it does. And yeah, I'm gonna give it to you guys to just tell me how you feel.
Thinking back on the conversations of the episode that we've already had, and while watching the scene, I was completely blown away with how everything progressed so quickly, and the acting, especially from Mel. I think you said her name was right. This was Mel. Yeah, unbelievable. And I think they even said in the post, in the again how they put the episode together was, I don't think in the games that Mel was. I don't think Mel had ever asked in the games for Ellie to slice open the stomach. That was something that they added into the show to kind of emphasize the level of intensity and kind of just enforce what Ellie had really just done. But the one thing that I will say that kind of is now taking me out of it a little bit is the fact that Ellie was so like cowardly with the idea of like shooting them. Again, I guess this goes into the conversations that we've had about the conflicting like ups and downs that she's had, and we just don't know where her her character is at, because she's talking about earlier how what she did to Nora honestly didn't feel that bad. It just felt like second nature to her. And then here she's kind of just like she was like shaking, holding the gun. She's like, I don't want to do this. Like, don't make me kill you. And this is like such a turn from how she just kind of handled the Nora situation. So that, now that I'm thinking about it, was a little weird for me. But overall, I mean, the moment Owen went for the gun, I knew Ellie obviously had to kill him. And then the after effects of the bullet, I don't think it ricocheted, right? I think it just coincidentally, it just also went past her as well and then hit the object behind her. But when she started bleeding and she started saying, cut me open, oh my God, my heart was racing. I felt every ounce of pressure that they wanted us to feel in this situation. And I was getting sick to my stomach. Like, she pops up the stomach and I'm like, what a fucking layer. Of course she's pregnant. Like, why wouldn't she be? Because, Dean is now in the situation, and this is just such a way for Ellie to just in her face just be like, what am I doing right now? And kudos, I guess I'll say kudos to the video game. That was just an intense scene, man. Holy shit. I was sick.
Yeah, I can't help but reiterate the part about it. Her just being like afraid and like hesitant and like not actually wanting to kill them. And it just is so tough. Again, it's like this flip-flopping of like, she's on the roof with Jesse and she's like, no, like we have
Murder.
to, like, I
It's like
have
murder
to
mission.
do this.
Let's go.
And again, maybe the explanation is that because of the Nora stuff, she's realized that it's really just about Abby. It's not about the other people, for sure. But I don't know. It just feels, it just feels like maybe because we're moving so fast potentially, and that we're not like sitting in this stuff, and where it just feels like every other scene, she has a different level of conviction towards like a different person and the mission in a different way. And and again, maybe it's because of my own expectations of, I wanted this like even more narrow-minded, like bloodthirsty Ellie after the Nora stuff. And we're getting like just moments of she's so intense, and then other moments of she's afraid, and maybe it's more realistic that way. But I think for me, it's slightly less enjoyable to just watch that way. But I do agree in that, like, I have the thought of that, and then Mel's given the directions about the transverse, and I was like, holy crap, like, is this about to happen right now? So at the end, walk away from this scene for sure of like feeling like an emotional sigh almost at like, what the hell I just watched with my eyes. But
I wanted to say, to go into more of like the whole conviction thing, I think what would have been even way more badass was, I love how they did shout out the whole map thing with Joel, like what Joel did in season 1 with, if you're going to point to the map and then you're going to point to the map, and if they're different, like that was a great call out to Joel. I think if she had kind of stuck to that mentality and how just kind of gung-hoed it like how Joel does it, just like pop some kneecaps if they're not telling you the right answer, like that would have been aligned with what she had been going through. But I do kind of see what you're saying, Kyle, that, and I didn't really process that till now, that yes, Nora was kind of that first piece into her realizing that it's more about Abby than it is about the other people that were in attendance there. So I guess that makes me feel a little bit better. But for me to come to the podcast and then have that realization is not something that I guess should have happened. It should have just. I'm just agreeing with you, and just that the consistencies feel a little weird to me. I would have liked to think I think I would have loved to see her go full badass mode, like actually popping some kneecap if the map alignment didn't work out, and her just like sticking to the I need to find Abby. But that's just me.
Yeah, it almost feels like I'm like working out my feelings live as we're talking about the scenes and the nuances and what each of us individually is picking up on them. But yeah, I just can't get away from the idea of like it's just less enjoyable to watch her ping pong between levels of conviction and upsettedness at different parts of the journey. And I don't know, because then we're gonna rewind and then get the other side of things, and I just don't know how I feel about all of it. And that's not like and maybe it's because maybe I should watch it again, another time and think about it. But I just don't necessarily like the feeling that I'm feeling after the episode ended, and I'm trying to kind of talk about it in a way.
I will say though, going into the positives though, it was funny because I think when Abby was executing the whole mission with Joel, I think I had kind of resided a little bit with Owen, saying, "Oh, I kind of like Owen of the group." I mean, sure, they just viciously murdered Joel, but Owen seemed like one of the I was going to say good guys, but who the hell is even good, as we've kind of come to realize. But I kind of had a hope for Owen in that maybe he would help be like a peacemaker in all this, and yet here he is with a bullet, through his throat, and definitely not coming back. But it was
he's
intense.
Also maybe an example too in the scene of like someone acting with conviction is just compelling.
Mm-hmm. Like he knew he was going to try and kill Ellie. Like there was no way he was ever like, he looked at Mel and was like, we're not, how I took it. He's looking at Mel and he's like, he's saying, yeah, we're going to show you where she is on the map. He wasn't going to do that with how he was looking at Mel. And so that was, the conviction of, I'm going to kill this girl before she can get anything out of us. And obviously it led into his downfall. And
experienced soldier. Well, Ellie, we know, is kind of not like that, but it just feels like Ellie's kind of bumbling around through varying emotional states and acting accordingly. And it's just, I'm not in love with watching it.
Your protagonist should have some bread and butter stuff to lean on at all times. Like you've been saying, a true conviction. And she has kind of been wavering on that. You guys were also bringing up, I think, how she decided to play this confrontation with Owen and Mel differently than Nora was maybe a little bit because of that scene of reflection on how the Nora stuff went down at the beginning of this episode, how she was with Dina and said, I thought it would be hard to like torture someone for this revenge that I'm seeking, but it came so easily. And you could tell that kind of scared her. Like, boy, did that come easy to me. So I think now, and she even says she's trying to paint herself as not the villain in this story because she compares herself to Abby's squad. When Owen says, you're going to kill us either way, she says, no, I won't, because I'm not like you guys. She's trying to be like, I'm better than you guys. I wouldn't do that. And let's not glance over. Owen correctly points out, hey, I told Abby not to kill you back in Jackson. Let's not remember that. I think there was a scenario where all three of them lived through this encounter. Maybe Owen and Mel have some busted kneecaps or something, but alive. And this is going to bring me to something I need to bring up that contrasted from the video games. Owen does reach for the gun and gets shot for it. Mel, after that, comes at Ellie with a knife, which forces Ellie to shoot Mel. Only after the fact does she see that Mel is pregnant. And in the games, we did not have this scene where Mel is still kind of with her last breaths, coaching Ellie through an emergency delivery that
C-section.
never comes to fruition, a C-section. So on the one side, I think the coaching her through the surgery made an already harrowing scene that much more tragic, and oh my gosh, really makes it sit with you. On the flip side, they turned what in the games was Ellie pulling the trigger and killing a woman into, in the show, an unfortunate mishap that was an unintentional kill two birds with one stones. It was an accident that Mel died in the show, whereas it was intentional in the games, albeit Ellie still did not know that Mel was pregnant when she shot Mel. So
I think
that
I think I like
Go
how
ahead.
they did it I think I like how they did it in this show, and that just might be my bias because I've only ever seen the show and I haven't played the game, but the layer that it adds of Mel being kind of almost innocent in all of this and being a bystander just adds so much depth to the whole situation of making Ellie realize that this is maybe not the right decision, because where if she is being attacked, then it's kind of like a self-defense thing. She can kind of find validation in why she had to kill a pregnant woman. Whereas here it's like, no, there was no validation. This was like total mishap accident that you didn't want to happen, but this is all still because of your rampage.
I think my big issue is the one bullet, two kills. Just feels like okay. I mean, again, how can they manifest an accidental and then having that emotional moment is probably difficult. And I can't personally put one out there right now. It just kind of was like, whoa. One bullet goes right through his neck, slices her neck, and they're both
like
dead. Was kind of a little bit.
There's not a much resistance in a neck. Like if it's going through a whole body, okay,
Yeah.
maybe, but the neck is like thin tissue. You could just
Yeah.
come on.
It's a heavy gun too.
Yeah, I was gonna say it depends on the obviously the caliber too of the pistol, like what
Yeah.
millimeter is it, whatever. But
No, that revolver, I mean, that'll pack a punch.
Yeah. I brought that up. I was actually pretty okay with how it went down in the show and the differences they made, but it was a curious choice because Dave, I think you were actually saying the opposite of this. You intentionally pulled the trigger and killed what wound up being a pregnant to. It's a little bit less morally complex because Ellie can be like, well, that was an accident. I really only wanted to kill Owen. It was a complete accident that she was just in the way. So I think it doesn't have the same moral complication as it did in the game, but the added layer of Mel being alive, suffering, trying to coach her through the surgery was something that's going to stick with
like,
me.
And you can see her, like her pupils dilating as she's losing all this blood. And when she's saying like, is it out? Oh, you're doing great. Oh, when she's saying you're doing great, and Ellie's not even cutting into her, I'm like, this is so fucked up.
Yeah.
This is so messed up. And then she's saying, is it out? And then like that's her last words. So messed up.
And I mean, that's kind of the boom, whoa scene. Tommy and Jesse show up. Obviously, Jesse was able to get to Tommy, and then they go back to the theater to meet with Dina. Ellie's still a little bit rattled. Jesse and Tommy are already planning how they're going to get back to Jackson. And Ellie and Tommy kind of have this talk where Tommy is just like, hey, we're leaving. Are you going to be okay with that, given that you've went all, through all this trouble and are still going to have some unfinished business? And Ellie just kind of says, I guess I'm going to have to be okay with it. And then we get the Jesse and Ellie conversation, which is essentially in the aftermath of it. Jesse kind of says, the thought did cross my mind that if I ever had my butt in Seattle, and was on this thing, you would be one of the first people to be coming after me and you would have my back in that regard. So that's why Tommy and I came to see you at the aquarium instead of immediately beelining it back to the theater. So they have a little bit of a reconciliation, but boy, you do not have nearly enough time to let that sit with you, because we hear a commotion in the main room, and I'm going to give it to you two because I knew that this was coming. What do we think?
I honestly love how fast it all happens. I mean, usually when like a character that you love has this like quick death, you're kind of just like, oh, what was that? You're not, you know, giving the character enough, you know, credit in his final moments. But this just adds so much level of realism. Like he runs through that door, it's a bullet in his head, and he's down. There's no time for grieving either, which like he runs through that door and he gets shot, and I'm sitting there and they're talking, and basically my ears were ringing. Like I can't even hear them because I'm just so mind blown that Jesse just got popped in the head so quickly. And again, I think usually that would piss me off, but I think it just adds that level of realism. Like this is a standoff right now, and we knew it was coming. You never know how though, and this did numbers for me. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was just seeing right there. And again, I know that, you know, Abby's not really in the right for hunting down Abby, and Abby wasn't really in the right. You know, everyone's morally gray here, but this was where I was like, okay, fuck Abby. Like I am so full on like, let's kill Abby after she just killed Jesse, even though I know we've been saying that Ellie's not going to complete the revenge. But God, this scene, seeing Jesse lying there, pain, man, pain and suffering all through my body. Even though we knew it was coming, it hurt.
It doesn't influence your thinking of Abby, considering this is on the heels of Ellie having just taken out Nora, Owen, and Mel.
I know that's the whole thing about it
dislike
too.
Ellie more.
That's fair too. I mean, that is absolutely fair. And my whole reaction to this, like, especially after reflecting on it, is, you know, I think Ellie as, God, I'm blanking on Joel's brother's name right now.
Tommy.
Excuse me for that. I can't believe I just blanked on that. But like Tommy is laying there gunpoint, and Ellie is facing this moment of weakness and pleading for their lives. And, you know, I think in that moment, obviously, I think she's willing to give up the revenge tour. But if she pops Tommy there and like Ellie somehow lives, does Ellie keep going? Like, is she still going to hunt down Abby, or does she finally learn her lesson? You know, like basically what I'm getting at is after this whole situation, one, I think obviously Ellie is going to live. She is the cure. So she has to, in my mind, be the one to survive. But how does she come out of this situation? If her and Abby don't resolve this right now, like if her and Abby get separated through all this, how do either of them stop with the killing? You know, how do neither of them end up just both being like, I can't kill you? You know, they're both peak anger right now. To me, it feels like we are, it should resolve and one of them is going to die. But I'm still going to stick to my guns and think that they will both live. I think the cycle of revenge will end. But this was a tough scene. This was gruesome.
I'm just sad.
Yeah. I'm sad. We lost a great man today.
Yeah, I mean, Captain Wyoming. He didn't. I'm just glad, I guess, maybe at some level too, that it was quick for him. You know, that it wasn't necessarily something that he had to think about. That
yeah, he wasn't like laying there in his blood saying, "I want to see my kid" or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, maybe revenge stories maybe just aren't for me. It just like is. It's like more upsetting, I think, than it is like it feels like good storytelling is how I'm feeling. And I'm just probably in an emotional place about it. But it's just like, again, like it just makes me not like Ellie even more than the other
she's the reason
things
they're all in this situation in the first place.
And that because it's like she's just like bumbling around in Seattle, like feeling bad a little bit about what she's doing, but still everyone else around her is reaping the consequences of it. And for sure, I could see that is like a 2-sentence synopsis of the series. I just don't think maybe I'm getting the level of enjoyment out of it that maybe the video game would have given me potentially, or that maybe season 3 will then allow me to kind of sit with in a deeper way. Because like Ellie to me as a character, just it feels at this point kind of unlikable in a way that like is just a little upsetting, I think, to me at this point. I wish she was just acting deeper in her convictions, and I don't think I would feel as bad about like the fallout from them. I think is kind of where I'm at. And I've said that probably 18 times, but this feels like the kind of culmination of it in how I'm feeling about the Jesse of it all. Like I get that revenge is, you know, an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind, and it's never the way, and everyone else around you gets hurt. But I'm just not enjoying maybe the consequences of it, because I'm feeling like I'm not totally behind the person that's creating the situation of the consequences. But I will say, Dave, I'm kind of gonna ask you a question, and I'll probably maybe give my take first. That I'm feeling like the gunshot was Dina.
Oh, 100%, Dina. The question is where did it hit? You know, like, is it going to be the final blow for Abby, or you know, is she only injured from the gunshot wounds?
It feels like you're saying too, like, is the last scene of the show not playing out before us?
Let's get into it.
It's the last scene of the end of season 3, or I can't imagine it would be the last scene if we get to a season 4. But like,
I'm going to be honest,
this not the last setting?
They showed us that title sequence of Seattle day 1, and I'm going to be honest, I did not get excited. I was like, I know I've been preaching about the WLF and Sarah fight, and I want the deep knowledge into what is driving that war. But they show that Seattle day 1 cut at the end, and I know it's going to be about Abby more so than it is about the WLF and Sarah fights, and I'll probably explain why Abby and her group is, which we didn't even talk about even really, is seems rather to be defecting from the WLF. Like Isaac earlier was talking about, where's Abby and her crew? All of her crew is also missing, and it seems like they are plotting something that is beyond the WLF, or maybe something more along of what their goals are, which we have no idea. But we get Jesse's death, we get the gunshot cut to black, and I'm fine with it. And then we get day 1 Seattle. I'm like, I don't really care what Abby's been up to up until the point that she's been tracking us. Like, how did she get to the theater so quickly is basically what I want to know. I don't care about what she's been doing in the time that she's been like back at the WLF, unaware of Ellie being in town. Again, this could easily be squashed. These issues that I have could easily be squashed if next season hits hard. But I was just like, I don't care what this bitch was doing. Like, all I want to know is how she found out. Like, was she already at the aquarium? Like, did she watch the whole Owen and Mel thing, like in the dark, like from the shadows? Like, was she right there watching it, and then she was just able to follow them back? I don't care what she was doing day 1 in Seattle when she has no idea Ellie exists. Personally, they could easily change my mind with, you know, what is actually to come. I have no idea what's to come, but it just took me out of it. It was just, I get a scene that really hit me hard into a scene that I personally I don't really care for yet, at least in this moment. You know, that it was weird for me.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, for sure. I mean, I'm going to watch, but
yeah, definitely.
I do feel like it could be interesting. And maybe part of that is because it seems like maybe we'll get some Isaac, Jeffrey Wright stuff, who I'm very interested in at this point, especially with kind of who's left, let's say. But I'm just so, like, the theater scene at the end of this. Like, I can't also imagine if the story like ended in like one more episode. So like, it almost feels like we kind of have to maybe let things breathe. And then I just don't know if the theater scene, this confrontation, is the last confrontation. Because if there was a world where like this is the last confrontation, and like say we had one more episode in this season and then it was 2 seasons and it was over, I would be I feel like so upset at how things went and like
so
how quickly.
You think Abby is going to escape somehow, and like Ellie is going to escape, right?
Potentially, I guess. I don't know. Again, I don't know how that'll manifest, but maybe the season 3 of like taking the step back and it'll feel better to like get to that point of where we are, and then the resolution in a way. I'm all over the place emotionally, if you can't tell about the show in this episode.
I think most people, based on how B Toms was saying with the IMDb ratings at the beginning, I think most people seem to be siding with you. I still overall thought this was a phenomenal season. I still think it was better than 1, and it seems like you guys would be hard pressed to be convinced otherwise on that. But I'm sticking to my guns. I thought this season was definitely better than season 1 personally.
I preferred season 1. Very simplistic answer. There was way more infected action, and there was way more Pedro Pascal as Joel, and I think that left a big vacuum that they weren't totally able to fill.
Fair.
Also, we get more into the revenge tour of Ellie, and Kyle's been telling us how she just kind of ping pongs around, and you really can't nail down what she truly cares about and what her convictions are. And when you do think you know her convictions, it's usually just blindly pursuing revenge against Abby, and that's not always the most likable shtick. We did have some, I think, great characters in Jesse, Dina. We get a lot more Tommy. But yeah, and I mentioned this probably in episode 1 and 2, like this season and this part of Ellie's saga is going to have a much darker feel because she, after these harrowing situations, she can't just give Joel a big hug anymore. She is on her own having to deal with all this and doesn't really have anybody to turn to. So yeah, it gets dark and she makes poor decisions and it's hard to watch a lot of the time. But Dave, you have been saying, I don't really care what Abby's deal is and what she's been doing Seattle day 1. I know for a fact you're going to eat those words because I've been saying it's compelling, but that I'm not at all surprised that's how you feel right now, because I don't think they've done the character of Abby a lot of justice. And I was trying to contextualize where this character was at in the games back in episode 2 when she came to Jackson and killed Joel. As you recall, obviously in the show, she says, I'm here to avenge my dad who Joel killed with the Fireflies in Salt Lake. Cool. Now we know our villain and her motivations and why this is all happening. In the games, like I said at the time, we didn't know her motivations at all. That was all yet to be revealed to us. So we just had this insane hatred for a villain who came into Jackson, killed our favorite character, dipped, and we were pretty gung-ho on Ellie's side of the revenge tour. But now we're like, well, Joel kind of killed like 50 Fireflies. I mean, that seems like an eye for an eye and a pretty even one. And to boot, Abby, who brings up in this final scene, I let you live and you wasted it, which is completely accurate. She could have taken out Joel, Ellie, and Dina, left Jackson, never would have heard from them again. So that adds the moral layer of, I don't think Abby is just a ruthless, guns a-blazing, kill everyone in sight type of person, which is actually a part of her character that was conveyed pretty well in the show. I have a lot of respect for this show for taking the format of the game, which I've already said is going to be hindered by just the necessities of producing a television show. We're going to have to wait 2 years to see the other side of this coin, whereas when you're playing the game, you just play it for the next 20 hours and you're like, this is awesome. So again, like my biggest takeaway for the audience is hang in there. I think there's going to be some payoffs, and probably rewatch season 2 right before season 3 comes out. And I think all of this is going to be a great viewing experience. And again, let's not glance at, like, HBO is just the best in the game at production value. So it like is a good show. I don't know. I totally understand your guys' frustrations, but yeah, I want to petition that there's still a lot left to dig into
Oh
in this
no, I'm
story.
still like, look, I mean, I did say that like I had no interest in Abby day one, and I am fully willing to accept and I'm fully prepared to eat those words. Like I know the show again, I've truly enjoyed season 2 and I will certainly be tuning into season 3. Um I it's just I can't wait for the just the culmination of everything that we've seen, the full circle moments. I want all of that. I can't wait. And I hope it's not in 4 seasons because that means we'd have to wait 4 years for a resolution. I don't know if I'm about that, but because yeah, I would
2030.
definitely rather it be wrapped up in 1 season. I feel like 3 seasons would be a great tie up. But again, I know, aren't they doing a Last of Us 3? I know the game got announced, or was that just kind of murmurs?
He keeps saying, the guy Neil Druckmann, who is the video game runner,
Mhm.
has said many times, I'll only do a Last of Us Part 3 if there's a story worth telling. And he's being real hoity-toity about it. It's like, okay, buddy, you would sell a bajillion copies of the game. Like if the higher-ups want you to make the game, you'll probably make the game, buckaroo. But
Yeah.
I think Naughty Dog is also making this other game. So who knows? Yeah, it's a weird one. They left it at a very bizarre place. Also, a lot of people, Dave, you were kind of saying maybe they should have just ended this season with the cut to black and the gunshot sound. Was it the right idea to give us the day one Seattle and her walking out into the stadium, which
I
kind of
think
is just like,
it would have
this is
hit
what you have
harder,
to
I
look
think.
forward to.
Yeah, if that was the beginning of season 3, I think I'd be fine with it. And I know that they're trying to tell us like, hey, this is what you have to look forward to, but it just felt so out of place with you guys just killed like I'm assuming a fan favorite character. And then we're going back to a point that is like we've already passed this point, essentially. And again, I know that they're going to tie this all in so well based on how they've done these 2 seasons, but it was weird to get the gunshots and then we just get brought to just a scene that means nothing to us, at least where we are watching wise.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be here in 2 years
Yeah,
for sure.
certainly I'll be here. I mean,
I just
I would
how
give
many
this
people
season
in the
an 8.
world
Yeah.
are gonna be there, and I'm feeling like they might be slightly disappointed in how many people tune in to season 3. And I would, again, we don't live in that universe where they did cut the black, but I feel like the number might be bigger if they had just cut to black and where people weren't going into season 3 being like, okay, it's gonna be Abby season 3. Like that kind of sucks. Some people, I trust you, B Toms, and I agree with you that I'm looking forward to that perspective for sure. But nonetheless, I mean, like I said, we'll be here for sure. I've enjoyed all of the episode conversations that we've had through the highs and the lows. I mean, it's an enjoyable show, I think, to talk about.
I give season 2 an 8 out of 10, man. I really enjoyed this season.
If we're given our rankings, I would give it a 7 out of 10, but if I'm being honest, that is buoyed by HBO's superb production value. I don't think I can watch an HBO Max show and if HBO does a 6 or lower out of 10, it's a terrible show. Like this is being propped up by how spectacular it looks. Like I said, that 6.6 in IMDb felt about right. I don't like going into the decimals, so I'll round up to a 7, but this one was just a bit slower for me. Kyle, you've been saying the word uneven. It did feel that way, and I think a lot of the stuff that comes through in 25 hours of gameplay, it's just impossible to really push onto the audience in 7 episodes. And let's take a step back and admit that a 7-episode season of television is just ludicrous and stupid
Disgusting.
and dumb and
Yeah.
just take a hike, go kick rocks. There, I said it. It is what it is, but it's the world we live in. So yeah, I'm sitting at a low 7 out of 10. And Kyle, give us a last little statement, then I'll take us out of here.
I think that rating seems about reasonable. It feels like it's almost all the shows we cover, I think, get better when I'm on them because it's always fun to talk about them. But I think like pure, just like watching the TV show, it's, 6.5, 7 probably feels about right. And I'll freely admit that is also me sitting in this emotional space due to the finale. And maybe in a couple of days, it'll be a solid 7. But I don't think it was better than season 1. I feel like season 1 felt like the whole time, like, whoa, man, like this is fucking awesome television the whole time.
What I will say is there were some bright spots. I still think episode 2 may have been the best episode of the series. The Bill and Franken season 1 was like just an exception to the entire tone of this series. So I don't know. You can judge that on your own. But there was a lot to like here. But it fell victim to some pitfalls and maybe just the nature of a television show versus a video game. So uneven maybe is the word that we'll leave you with. Kyle, thanks for saying that a bunch. I've just hijacked that from you. And yeah, that's going to do it on our season 2 coverage. This was an up and down finale maybe, but I think we hit all the points that we needed to hit. And like we've been saying, we're going to be here seated for season 3. We're going to be podcasting on season 3. But hey, while you're here at the Binge Empire podcast, why don't you hit that follow or subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating? That is the easiest, most free way you can support the podcast here. And check us out on our other feeds. Like I said, the Unreal Podcast, The Core, Final Form, Dark and Twisted. We're on Spotify, YouTube, the Apple Podcast app, wherever else you may find your podcast. And once again, we as a whole are Bingetown TV. And thank you so much for listening.